deputy counsellor, and 2 students, Joseph and Cara. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hi Joseph, how are you today?
Fine, thanks.
And Cara, how are you?
Good.
As we discussed on the phone earlier, I wanted to speak with both of you about the subjects you have chosen to study and how you are managing your time. Okay?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay, so I'll start with Cara. You've been here for how many months now?
I've been here for 6 months.
How are you finding it?
It's good. I'm enjoying the course.
And what about life outside? Are you making friends and socializing?
Not really. People here are quite closed. They don't talk to you.
I see. So, what do you do after classes?
I usually go home and study, and I might go out for a walk, but never really with anyone. Sometimes my roommate Louisa comes with me, but she always seems to be busy.
How is this affecting your schoolwork?
I don't think it is, but I miss home.
Cara, what I suggest for now is that you look into joining one of the social clubs on campus. There are a variety of them. You can go camping, skiing, snorkeling, painting, dancing, reading, horse riding, rowing. There's a list on the school website. Have a look and work out which one you're interested in and which suits your timetable. You'll meet friends that way and people who have the same career interests as you. As for the subjects you've chosen for a career in microbiology, I think you should look into dropping one of your subjects and picking it up again next year as a minor. You have a lot on your plate, and this will just cause great pressure. It doesn't mean that you aren't coping, but you're doing about 10 hours more than the average student a week. Think about it, and we can make another appointment to discuss it. When are you free?
I have an hour free usually on Wednesdays at 11:30.
Okay, good. Come to my office at 11:45 and wait in reception. Okay?
Okay, I'll see you then.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Joseph, how are you finding the university?
I love it. It's very different from home. Life here is very much focused on study and also socializing through sport. People have been very friendly and curious about my culture.
So, you've managed to integrate well?
I think so. I've joined the rugby team, something I'd never thought I'd be interested in.
And how are your studies going?
I think I am doing well. I have a few assignments that need some work, but overall, I'm coping.
That's good. I'm happy that you're enjoying the university, but remember, don't let your schoolwork get too far behind, because it will pile up, and before you know it, you will be late handing in work. You know that there's a penalty for handing in work late?
No, I didn't.
You would have been told at the start of the course, during orientation.
I don't remember.
You need to remember these things. They are very important. You might be an excellent student, but if you consistently hand in work late, you'll be penalised and you might end up losing your degree over it. That's a lot of years of work, okay?
Yes, I'll remember that.
And also remember that you have to attend 90% of your classes. So far, you have missed 5 tutorials. Be careful here. These could also cost you your degree. Is there any particular reason you missed these classes?
I'd been training for our rugby match the night before and, well, we went out afterwards and I slept past my alarm clock.
Joseph, I know this culture must be very different from where you come from, but please try and be a little more conservative with your time. I think maybe you should spend more time on your studies and less time on socializing. The subjects you've chosen are intensive. I want you to spend 3 hours a night studying before you decide to do anything else. I'll make an appointment to see you in a month and we can assess your progress. I'll give you my business card. All my contact details are there. Call me in 3 weeks to organise another meeting. Do you have any questions for me?
No, none.
OK, I'll see you in a month.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You are going to hear a radio program about sport. First, look at questions 11 to 14. For these questions, listen carefully and circle the correct letters.
And now for our Mystery Personality of the Week and your chance to win one of our fabulous prizes. Last week's competition generated a huge response, and the first 5 answers pulled out of the bag will receive £100 worth of sports clothes vouchers. And if you didn't win last week, here's another chance. And this week's prize is even bigger. We're giving away 10 prizes of £250 worth of book, music and clothes vouchers to mark the first anniversary of the show on the air. So get your pens ready to take down the address details. Just write the name of the person you think is our mystery personality and send it to Mystery Draw at the address Marcia will give you in just a second. The address will be repeated at the end of the show for those of you who didn't get it. And so it's over to Marcia, who will tell you a few tantalizing details about our mystery person this week.
Thanks, Mike. Well, here goes. Our mystery person this week is a very well-known footballer who plays for a famous club and has also played for his national team. He is very talented and is enormously popular, especially for the part he played in a famous footballing victory. And 2 clues. He hasn't got a famous wife, and he speaks French. If you think you know who it is, then pop the answer on a postcard and send it to Mystery Draw, P.O. Box 5110, London SE1 5LE. That's P.O. Box 5110. And please don't forget to write your name and address too. And now it's back to Mike.
Before the broadcast continues, look at questions 15 to 20. As you listen to the second part of the sports programme, answer questions 15 to 20. Circle the correct letter.
Thank you, Marcia. Get those postcards in and make this a bumper anniversary draw. Now, if you remember, last week on the show, we talked to the organiser of a new group set up to help young people up to the age of 20 to get involved in activities like horse riding, tennis, scuba diving, cycling, or any form of sport which involves some kind of expense. John Tebbit, the organiser, rang us to say that the response to his appeal on the show was staggering. A large number of people, both young and old, have offered their services free as volunteers. The whole thing has been overwhelming. John said that they had also had numerous offers of help throughout the country to use facilities free of charge. As if that was not enough, they've received many donations, including several rather large gifts of more than £5,000. On behalf of John Tebbit, and also of those who will benefit from the generous gifts to the Trust, I would like to say thank you. This week, we're going to talk to a very unusual athlete indeed. Patrick, who is 20 years of age, has been wheelchair-bound for the past 5 years after a motorcycle accident left him paralysed from the waist down. This has not stopped this young man from getting out and about. He's an inspiration to all of us. Patrick has excelled in archery, beating the best in the field, so much so that he has won sponsorship from leading sports manufacturers, which has now enabled him to devote more time to perfecting his skills. So I would like to introduce you to Patrick, who is going to tell us what this sponsorship means to him.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You'll hear a conversation among two students and their tutor about the presentation they are going to make at the tutorial class.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Right, Jason and Karen. How are your presentations for the next tutorial class?
I feel a bit nervous. I haven't done that before. Although many of my classmates in the same tutorial group have finished theirs. But I think them a little uninteresting because they just read out their notes. I hope mine will be more attractive
It seems you have a higher demand for yourself. As for me, I have no sense of uneasiness because I made one last semester. But I feel no sense of satisfaction about it. It lacked strong arguments, I think. How much did you get for the last presentation, Jason? 83% actually, but my goal for the next one is over 87%. It's pretty good. What is your topic for this one? Strategies for reading. I feel my biggest problem is in the reading speed, rather than vocabulary, which is most students' problem, though. I am slow, especially in reading articles on my major courses. They are complex and dull. Have you found any effective methods? Well, I'm not quite sure. I suppose to skim the books or articles is a good approach. Yes, by skimming the book first, you get the choicest parts. It saves a lot of time. You don't have to read every word of the passage, but you have to learn to read certain parts intensively. Yes, I include that in my presentation. There is one thing I'm not clear yet. Why don't we make presentations more related to our major? Once you learn to write clearly, read analytically, and listen to lectures effectively, you'll begin professional tutorials. That means you should start from the basics. Well, Karen, how is your presentation?
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
Oh, Karen, how is your presentation?
I am still in a panic. I want to find some more interesting topics about writing, but I wonder what articles I can refer to, because there are so many of them.
Did you get the list of the reading materials handed out last class?
Yes, but there are over 20 on it. I have only a week to prepare, so I wonder if
Okay, let me give you some suggestions. You needn't read them all because some of them deal with the same issue. The article by Halsworth is really worth reading. It covers the aspects of organising the thoughts and ideas.
Okay, Halsworth.
You should also read the article by Jackson, but just look at the part on research methodology, how they did it.
Right, I'll read that one.
You should also read the article by Fisher, but just look at the part on the writing plan. That is, how to plan your writing in a systematical way.
Okay, Fisher, got that.
And if you have time, the one by Risewell says very relevant things. It teaches how to title your articles and make it appealing. You should finish the whole book.
Okay.
Now, the one by Burns, if I were you, I wouldn't bother with the whole passage. Just read the conclusion, which summarises the use of rhetoric.
Oh, now I understand. Thank you very much.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
Today I'm going to talk about my end-of-year project.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good morning. Today I'm going to talk about my end-of-year project. I wanted to find out why men and women tend to perform at different levels in particular sports. Let me start by explaining why I chose this subject. Now, as some of you may know, I'm an enthusiastic long-distance runner myself, but I have never felt particularly worried about the fact that I usually finish several minutes behind my male counterparts.
How it all started was when a first-year student approached me because he'd read an article about why women swimmers never compete successfully with men and wondered if I could look into the issue in regard to running. My tutor confirmed that a lot of interesting research had been done on this issue, and also I knew that whatever I found out was likely to be useful in training programs I run at a local girls' school. So, I started doing some preliminary reading, and what I found out was a mixture of the expected and the unexpected. It didn't come as all that much of a surprise to learn that male runners have more muscle and women more fat, and this accounts for most of the difference in sports performance between men and women. This is normally caused by differences in hormones. A male hormone, testosterone, builds muscle, whereas a female hormone, estrogen, causes fat to accumulate. Of course, this was something that we learnt about very early on in sports science. But then I began reading about the nature of muscle, and this is where I found something that did surprise me. Men and women have exactly the same type of muscle fibres, which means that they are capable of fuel burning at the same rate. I was also reading some very interesting research on differences between the average height of men and women. We all know, of course, that men are much taller on average than women, but what this means is that women actually work much harder because they have to take a lot more strides to cover the same distance. I hadn't understood that before I read this research. So, I set up my own small-scale research project to investigate some of these points and a few others. I asked for men and women volunteers from the university running club, and I timed their speed in a race. Then I worked out proportions by dividing a person's running time by their height. And what I found was that by this measure, men were only slightly ahead of the women. For my second experiment, I put weights on the men's shoulders, so that the men and women would have the same height-to-weight ratio. I found that under these conditions, the women actually ran faster than the men. In my last experiment, I decided to look at what is called elasticity by measuring how high the men and women could jump, and I found that my male and female participants had equal levels of jump power.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.